They all touch on the urges and the desires that we have within us, the things we're most afraid of. And scary movies have been traditionally about facing down those fears, facing down those bad things in our past, and overcoming them. A lot of them are morality tales. You know, people, even if you look at the classic horror movies, the people who become victims of the monster, sometimes they're just characters you don't learn much about. But usually they're the ones who deserve it. They did something, and it comes back together. It's a very basic kind of story. And if all these scary movies are helping us overcome our fears, I don't think they're bad. If they're helping us to face down the things that scare us, that's not a bad thing. You know, but if you look at scary movies lately, you notice something. A lot of them don't have that straightforward plot anymore, where the good guys come, or the not-so-good guys come, and face down the monster and overcome. There are a lot of movies where you don't know who the monster is. There are movies where it turns out that the hero and the monster are really the same person. I mean, we've had Dr. Jekyll for a while, but he's taken it to a whole other level. There are movies where the monster wins, and not just because they're setting it up for a sequel down the road, just because they want to throw that statement out there. Sometimes good doesn't win out. And I think that these new movies and this new way of doing scary movies hits at the point that the thing that we're most afraid of isn't anything out there. Homelessness, hunger, threats, and bullying, all that stuff that Paul talked about. That where we're really most insecure today is with ourselves. You know, we don't have all the systems, the rules, the people telling us what to do and keeping us in line like we used to. We have so much more freedom than we once did. So many more choices than we once did. And people at a pretty deep level are afraid. Afraid not of everything out here, but afraid of what's in here. I think our deepest fears aren't about anybody who's going to attack us, but about who we might end up attacking. I don't mean, you know, jumping on, physically attacking. I mean those subtler, more socially acceptable ways of attacking and harming people. We fear those things. And I think we fear them more than we used to. And that's what all these scary movies are really talking about. Those fears we have within. Well, Paul, here today, in this reading we heard, he has something to say about that too. He reminds us that Jesus came to overcome everything that could possibly affect us. He asks this question, who would dare tangle with one of God's chosen? And the answer to that question is easy. God's chosen would. Who would tangle with me? Who would try to undermine me? Who would try to knock me down? Well, I would. We all at some level are dragging ourselves down, even when we're pushing ourselves forward. And Paul says this, God knew what he was doing from the very beginning. He decided from the outset to shape the lives of those who love him along the same line as the life of his Son. The Son stands first. In the line of humanity he restored, we see the original and intended shape of our lives there in him. The way we're supposed to live is the way Jesus lived. And Jesus, you know, he got attacked, he got challenged, he even got killed. Think about that. This is what life is supposed to be like. It sounds crazy in a way. That bad things are supposed to happen to us. But what Jesus had was something a lot greater than any kind of power from the outside. Jesus had that center in God. Jesus was never thrown off course. Jesus was never swayed. Jesus was never moved to turn away. And it wasn't that the stuff wasn't going on inside. He said to God the night before he died, Lord, if there's another way to do this, I'd really appreciate it. But then he said, but not your will, but mine be done. Jesus' unity with God was complete. And so Jesus didn't fear anything. I don't mean he didn't fear like he didn't, doesn't mean he wanted to go through it. But he wasn't turned away from where he was going. And where he was going wasn't the cross. The cross was just a step along the journey. Where he was going was glory, the glory that people saw. And not just after he rose, but even in his day-to-day life. As he walked, where he walked, people were healed and made whole. Just by coming into contact with him. That's what we're supposed to be like. People whose fearlessness, whose peace, and whose strength are so great that even though everything is falling down around us, people are healed just by coming into contact with us. We have that ability. Paul says, this is what God wanted our lives to be like. Imagine that. Then he says, after God made the decision of what his children should be like, he followed it up by calling people by name, and after he called them by name, he set them up on a solid basis with himself. And after getting them established, he stayed with them to the end, gloriously completing what he had begun. That's what we're called by name, to complete in ourselves the work that God has given us. I don't mean to do stuff, but who we're supposed to be. And so Paul says this, and I want to say it with him. I want all of us to say this. I'm absolutely convinced that nothing living or dead, angelic or demonic, today or tomorrow, high or low, thinkable or unthinkable, absolutely nothing can get between us and God's love because of the way that Jesus, our Master, has embraced